Hi everyone and welcome to a new roundtable discussion on issue 3 of WhatCulture Wrestling. That's the title of the magazine because we couldn't be bothered coming up with a better title. I'm joined here by two of the men who bring this magazine to life. Two men who are responsible for the covers in front of you. If you're watching this, if you're listening, responsible for the covers on shop.whatculture.com. First of all, Adam Cleary, who is Joe Hendry's Make-A-Wish kid today, I guess. How you doing?
I'm alright. I'm boiling actually. I'm going to take this off.
Show the back first.
That's just
that's
the name I'll go by. It's fine.
Adam Cleary, tell people what your assignment was on putting together WhatCulture Wrestling issue 3.
Oh, well, after my good friend here collates all the actual interesting bits, I just get given all the raw materials and turn it into a magazine.
It makes it very pretty.
Yes, I make it look nice.
It's this behind-the-scenes analysis that you people are watching for. James Dixon.
Hi, Kenny.
You are the man who is always annoyed in life and hates doing anything, hates people. The only thing you like is Christmas, hence your Santa t-shirt.
I like wrestling.
You also like tackles in a football pitch, but we'll not go there, shall we? What did you do in this magazine?
Everything.
Care to elaborate on that?
What more do you want?
You're the editor-in-chief, right?
I'm the editor, which means I get all the articles in, commission most of them.
What, you sound so depressed about it?
Because
I'm the editor.
I think it's because we've already started issue 4.
We've started
that's
issue
why
4,
it's
and it's about to be Christmas, and the deadline's tight, and we're like, right, okay, we'll see how quickly we can get it done. We got that one done pretty quick, though, right?
yeah, it felt like it.
So issue.
I haven't finished yet. Well, you asked me a question, but I haven't even answered yet.
Well, answer the question then.
So I'll commission articles.
Right.
We'll get them in, we'll edit them, we'll proof them, I'll send them to Adam, he makes them look pretty, I'll write a couple. And then the biggest task is, of course, compiling the big list, whichever it is that month, which, of course, in this issue was the top 100 wrestlers ever.
What a seamless link. That was incredible.
And what about issue 4? Before we talk about issue 3, any tease of what we're going to get in issue 4? What the list is going to be? What any of the content's going to be? Can you give the listeners and the viewers any indication of what they're going to get?
Well, a lot of people know already because it's the end of year awards, and a lot of them we have put out to the general public.
Ah.
Well, some of them.
Some of them. Not the important ones. Not after this carry on.
Not after this, yeah.
Farce.
So, remember to vote at wc.pw for King Ross as your commentator of the year. Wrestling. So we're going to talk a little bit about the top 100 wrestlers as printed in this here magazine.
As voted for by the fans.
Voted by the fans, yes. This was voted for. There is lovely artwork of Japanese men.
Oh, you don't know who it is?
It's Randy Savage.
Yeah, very good. Oh, you know that
Randy
one.
Savage, I know him.
Good.
We go way
You
back.
should read this magazine, maybe you might learn something.
I had to proofread the thing. I was up
So
to
if there's
I was
any
up, I was up to
mistake in it,
2 in the morning proofreading this,
Who's to blame?
and there was a lot of errors. So luckily I stepped in to help, because there's nothing worse. I think we can agree as wrestling fans, when you buy something and there's a mistake, it grates at you. You think, how can I buy something that has a mistake in it? So no pressure for issue 4.
No.
So what we're going to do in this podcast is kind of talk about the top 100 wrestlers, and I'm going to bring up some controversial picks and get these experts' opinions on...
Can you not touch me?
Touch me twice to make up for it if you want.
Would you like to explain this thing going on? This
Didn't have time to straighten it this morning.
I'll get the old GHDs out and just
Yeah.
pull it down.
Yeah.
for your Jim the Anvil Neidhart goatee.
That's right.
So we'll talk about some
Can you
controversial
explain
picks.
this hair? I mean, if we want to play that game,
It's called gelling it to the side when coming in the house.
Boys.
nice.
However,
You're hella
should we
boys,
explain the
Boys,
Christmas
you can kiss
jumper? Christmas jumper.
Can we point out I had a Christmas pudding jumper on yesterday when I thought we were going to record this, and today I've just come in with what was clean.
letting the side down, buddy.
I felt terrible. It's like a
So the
plan.
top
You literally
100,
addressed a casual
you know.
funeral. So let's talk about number 100 on the list, James Dixon. Vince McMahon is the number 100 on the 100
Well,
best wrestlers.
start as you mean to go on, I guess.
What did you make of him being in this and
Like I just
part
said, start as you mean to go on. How
Maybe
I was
more than that.
baffled by Vince's inclusion. I understand it because he was a great heel in a time when people really look back on fondly, the Attitude Era, and he had the great rivalry with Austin, and his WrestleMania matches are always special in their own kind of way. But 100th greatest wrestler ever, I mean, we're pushing it, aren't we?
I mean, we did sort of leave. I mean, we very, very vocally said, like, the interpretation of greatest is up to whoever votes. You know, you can go for technical ability. You can go for legacy.
What's your interpretation of greatest wrestler? What would your criteria be for you?
I don't know, just kind of like a personal fondness for watching them and listening to them. Just how much they spoke to me, I guess, or how much they made me believe. Is that
really?
Makes
sense.
sense.
I think the opposite of that. I think you have to take the personal opinion of something out of it completely. And be objective, which is what I think a lot of voters found very hard, and people we polled as well in the office and such, is like people had picked their 10 favourite wrestlers rather than who they thought the 10 greatest wrestlers were. But, you know, they might think they're the greatest because they're the favourites. I get that. But it made it very interesting when the results came.
I think it's difficult because, like, for me, I look at it as more than just in-ring. Like, I think it's about promos and drawing money and all these different things.
Yeah.
But I don't think that you can completely remove your personal opinion from it. There is a level of sort of your subjective opinion on what you liked or what worked for you. So, for example, if it was favourite, my number one would be Hulk Hogan. But I can't, with all good conscience, put Hulk Hogan as number one because I think there are... for me, there is another number one, which we will get to as we go down this list.
I think you could make the argument that Hogan is number one.
You could.
I could.
a lot of people did.
Certainly agree.
But
with
we
that.
will
A lot
get
of
to
people
we
did.
will get to those gentlemen. But Vince being 100 was obviously there. Adam Cleary, one of the surprises of this issue,
Well, you say a surprise.
was number 94 on the 100 greatest wrestlers of all time. Martin Kirby
Well,
of WCPW.
If we just look at the sort of names that are surrounding Martin Kirby,
Sure.
we've got to the left of him Tiger Mask, and to the right of him George Hackenschmidt. Now, can we honestly, with straight faces, say that Martin Kirby isn't bringing as much to the business as those two men are?
So
Straight faces.
why was Martin Kirby? I mean, I don't want to besmirch the name of Martin Kirby because I think he's great, but
I think with James saying, look, Vince McMahon's number 100 because the starters we meant to go on. I think Martin Kirby sort of reflects the kind of people who were voting in this. It's predominantly our existing audience. There's, you know, we wanted this to be a survey or a thing of all wrestling fans, but realistically, it's just the ones we can reach, and we reach them through the YouTube channel and through the promotion and through the website.
And the majority are the WWE fans are now WCW fans, I guess.
I mean, when the list first started coming in, like, for the first couple of days, it genuinely looked, I put this in the editor's letter, it looked like some cross between, like, the roster off WWF Warzone, the PlayStation game, and just the top of the WCPW card. Obviously, over time, it sort of, like, evened itself out, and it got a bit more respectable, but I think it's just, people really enjoy him at the minute, and he's very much in the forefront of people's minds, and especially in the forefront of the minds of the people who will read this magazine.
And King Ross.
And
championed
Ross,
his cause,
did also push for that.
Influenced.
I think part of it as well is that we live in a culture now where everything's instantaneous. It's Twitter, it's constant, you know, what have you done for me lately sort of thing. And it clouds some people. And the issue is sometimes when you open up a vote to the public, like, you can't control how it goes. You know, it's going to go whatever way it goes.
Which is fine. And, you know, we've tried to justify the rankings based on why we think they've been voted in that position in the bios for each of them. And, you know, offered a little opinion on where we maybe think they should be in relation.
Speaking of which, to that point, number 73 on the list is JBL,
Yes,
John Bradshaw Layfield, who I think, I don't know the figures, but I'm sure if you had to say who has blocked the most people on Twitter in their lifetime, JBL would probably be up there because he does not like any form of criticism. But now, somebody very close to you wrote JBL's bio on the 100 Greatest Wrestlers, and I don't think that the bio that's in there, which you can buy at shop.whatculture.com, really reflects him being one of the greatest of all time. JBL number 73, what are your thoughts on
It does start, oh lordy lord. We'll give away that for free.
I think I have no issue with JBL as a worker. I think he was limited, but I think he did what he did very well. He was a good heel when he was WWE champion. He grew into his role. So when he first won that belt, there was uproar. You know, nobody believed him in the role. And then, you know, he grew into it. When you've got a belt for nearly a year and you've got smoke and mirrors around you, the cabinet. You know, you can achieve a lot, and he did. But the thing is, if WWE tells you every week that JBL is a legend, and people are easily swayed, I think. And if you say the guy's a legend, so, well, he's a legend, I've got to vote for him. And it's people who hate Ross who, you know, decided to go against him. It's one of the two. I can't justify his.
I mean, he was the longest reigning SmackDown champion, but also the thing is, like, so I'm probably one of the only people in this office who I've only stopped watching wrestling twice in my life. I stopped watching in '95 because
everybody else,
we didn't have my mum and I didn't have Sky, and also the friends I had who taped it just didn't tape it anymore, and it was terrible. Yeah. So there was those things, but the other time I stopped watching was pretty much right after WrestleMania 20 because I just didn't buy JBL. Now, in hindsight, I've been able to go back and enjoy some of his very racial stuff that he did.
No, you enjoyed his racial stuff, not
because it was good heat.
Right.
It was good heat. He was actually a heel who cared about being a heel, not wanting to get fan cheers like most heels do. So I give him that. I do think he deserves that. I think the problem is after he had that initial year run where he did do some good stuff, after that it was so terrible for a long time. I mean, remember that he had a match at No Way Out 2005 in a barbed wire cage against the Big Show? Oh.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
I mean, I think if anyone if the people voting had actually seen him work more, I don't think he'd be anywhere on this list.
To be fair to JBL, he's the only person who I will ever sit down if I'm bored and just watch a supercut of his finisher. Yeah, because I can watch that.
It might be the finisher.
It might be the finisher.
He has one of the great finishes, you know. So maybe that's why.
I'm going to push this one back to you. I was going to try and go back and forth with the ones that we talk about, but I feel like this next one's very important to you because you personally enjoyed this man as a child and as an adult. You know, I don't mean you enjoyed him.
That's some awful phrasing.
Yeah.
I didn't mean you enjoyed him in a, you know...
Let's clarify.
Come to me sort of sense. Okay. But enjoyed him as in you were a child and he was charismatic and helped you begin your fondness of wrestling in WWF. The Ultimate Warrior is in at number 37. And I think the controversy for some people on Warrior, when you go through the list and you look at different numbers and who's where, is, for example, Dusty Rhodes is number 47.
It's easy to explain.
Warrior is... But what I wanted to ask you was, obviously, Warrior is going to be higher because the predominant people voting for this are WWF fans or people who are eating up the WWE narrative. Yeah. But do you think that it hurts the list in any way for guys like the Warrior maybe to be higher than guys like Dusty and Vern Gagne?
No, not with Warrior. I think I think Warrior's legacy is far greater than a lot of modern fans perhaps give him credit for, to be honest. If you asked some random people in the street to name some wrestlers, chances are you'd get Steve Austin, you'd get Hulk Hogan, Warrior, maybe Randy Savage, you know, and probably The Rock. John Cena nowadays as well. But like fans who don't watch now, fans... You know, I think
my mum knows who the Ultimate Warrior is.
Exactly, and I think a certain generation will always associate Ultimate Warrior with their childhood, like ourselves. You know, and he's got a very marketable, memorable look. You know, with the face paint, with the tassels, with the entrance, with the muscles. You know, and I think he did a lot of good when he was around. I enjoy him. I think he's had good matches, better than he's given credit for. Again, people criticise his promos, but how else could he have done them? Can you imagine if he just stood there and give a... Well, I mean, he did give some boring promos, but that was in WCW. But can you imagine if he just stood there and just talked like a normal guy?
I think he was very, for me personally, he was very of his time. Like, he totally worked in the era he was in. The problem he had was that when he left and then he tried to come back, it wasn't quite as good as it was.
Yeah, it was reduced every time.
And then the problem was when he would come back in 96 and 98, times had changed, where that character didn't quite work. Whereas had he stayed, a guy like The Undertaker, like if you'd said to somebody in 1991 or 1990, this guy's going to be around 20 years, you would have laughed him out of the building because you would have thought it was a 2-year gimmick.
And here's the thing, Warrior was a better worker then than Taker was then. You know, Taker improved a hell of a lot, and Warrior could have done the same if he'd stayed around. And I think the character could have evolved. I mean, I don't know how, but...
It could have been. Adam Cleary, want to ask you about one. Brock Lesnar. The Beast Incarnate, a guy who for a lot of people made watching WWE bearable in 2014 or 2013. He's number 29 on the list. And I would have thought personally that if we're going by what James was saying about, you know, it's current fans that are voting and all that sort of stuff, I would have thought he would have charted higher here.
Really?
Why do you think the Brock... Do you think 29 is where you would kind of expect him?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I actually brought this up when we were looking at the initial list, and I was like, at first I thought, he should have been higher, but then I thought, well, he's only really part-time, he wrestles a couple of times a year, so I would have thought maybe he should have been higher, further up the list, but when you think about it, like, the amount he's actually wrestled since his debut It's not a lot. He's full time for 2 years of his career or something, if that.
On the main roster, yeah.
Like if he'd been full time his whole career, like I mean, I think it even says this in the thing. Like he would have been easily in the top 10, one of the greatest of all time if he'd been full time the whole time. But I think that's kind of a reflection of like A, how good he is and how fondly he's thought of, but B, how little exposure he's had comparative to a lot of the guys around him. Like you were saying before about JBL, champion for a year. If you repeat it over and over, this guy's legend, this guy's legend, this guy's legend, people believe it.
Yeah.
But with Lesnar, he's never had that.
He's good at that as well.
He's never quite had that exposure. The vast majority of the time you're hearing about how good he is, he's not there.
True, and you know what? I actually think that's maybe hurt him a bit in this. I think if this vote was a year ago, Lesnar would have been definitely top 20.
He's had a bad 2016.
He has,
which
and,
is hard.
that's actually reflected in what the main feature is in issue 4, in terms of like the end of the year awards and some of the negative awards. Brock received quite a lot of votes, and we were a little bit surprised until we sort of thought about it and realised, well, yeah, actually he's not done a great deal. That's other than being destroyed by Goldberg. He's not done a lot.
Well, I was going to say, just going off what you were saying, I think a year ago, Brock not having had that many matches, not being on TV much, would have probably helped him because
it
now
retains that mystique. Doesn't it?
But now after 2016, the mystique's kind of gone because the year hasn't been great for him. It's like if you bring in a special attraction and you don't use the special attraction well for the 3 or 4 times you see
if you compare it like The Undertaker, like who comes up once a year, that match is always good. I mean, I'm pretty right. I mean, it's not, even if it's not the best worked match, it's entertaining.
I mean, what Undertaker and Shane sold WrestleMania this year. That was
what did Brock do at WrestleMania? Had less time than the Divas tag match with Dean Ambrose, which the only interesting thing about it, which was the prospect of Brock Lesnar getting a chainsaw used on him.
Just Brock Lesnar could no sell a chainsaw.
Just didn't happen.
So speaking of, you were talking about sometimes in wrestling, there was a point I was going to make. I completely lost it. We were talking about
It'll come.
WWE making people seem like legends and bringing it up over and over and over again. Yeah. And you said WWE are very good at that.
Yes,
and I think an indication of how good they are at that is number 15 in the list, Triple H. Now, Triple H, I'm not saying that Triple H doesn't deserve to be relatively high on this poll, given the context of who's voting, what they're voting for, and what they've watched. However, what's interesting to me is Triple H is above guys like Randy Savage, Daniel Bryan, Mick Foley, all guys who I would have thought that people would have had, like especially Bryan, as an example. I thought that given the kind of how current people tend to vote now, or what have you done lately?
But he hasn't wrestled really full time for 2 years.
But Triple H hasn't really wrestled either.
Was WWE champion at WrestleMania.
I forgot about that.
But memorable that people watched that match though, surely. And you got to remember, when we first put this poll out, it wasn't long after WrestleMania we put this poll out.
I think it might have been.
Well, production time for the mag, it was only a month or two.
No, man, it was more like August, I would say.
Well, still, that was a garbage main event.
Yeah, it was
a garbage main event.
It was, but he won the Royal Rumble.
He did. But I think maybe part of the problem is that they position. Maybe he's like part of the reason people are voting for him is because they were like, yeah, we prefer him to Roman Reigns because he was the guy that came in.
The thing is with Triple H is he is a very good worker, a B+ player, if you will. But he is not.
I love that you smile at me as if I'm the one that's going to argue that with you.
He's not an all-time great, in my opinion. When this belief that he is one of the Attitude Era's greatest stars, and
he's the only one that stuck around.
He was just the one who stayed, yeah. And you know what? He was great. I will admit he was great in 2000, best in the world in 2000. He got injured in 2001, and every year after that he's been poor. I think 2003, 2004, he was horrific.
I do want to say that to give him credit, the stuff he did with Bryan around WrestleMania 30 season was great.
It was great, but look at who he's in the ring with, and then.
No, but I mean even like what he did for that storyline and gave Bryan.
Well, it's about time he gives something back, though.
Yeah,
you know, after everyone else is.
And I then thought he changed his ways, and then he fought Sting at WrestleMania 31.
Yeah, exactly. So. And I think the fact that he's beaten everybody. Triple H has beaten everybody.
WCW lost the Monday Night Wars. Did you know that?
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, just let you know.
I mean, I can understand why he's in that position, but I don't agree with him personally.
One that's more personal to me, that's the only reason I'm really bringing it up, is Hulk Hogan being number 13. So I just want to kind of say from my perspective, I don't think any list where he is not top 10 can be argued as completely flawless. I think he needs to be in the top 10. I think that the impact he had, what people don't understand is without Hulk Hogan, we're not here. Really, because had Vince not gone national with Hogan, WWF would not become successful. You wouldn't have seen The Undertaker. You wouldn't have seen Shawn Michaels rise, Steve Austin.
Everything you would have seen the Monday Night Wars as well, know, which again give WWF a boost.
Yeah, and him turning heel with the NWO boosted them up. Yeah. All these things that he did, whether you like him personally or not, whether you believe the stories that we read about him or not, like how people can deny his influence in wrestling is astonishing to me. The TNA run,
be a lack of knowledge,
the TNA run, I think, really hurt him.
It hurts everybody.
Because if you look at it up until about 2005, he was like the Babe Ruth of WWE, and then he does the reality show, which is a horrible mistake. He then goes to TNA, an even worse mistake. Then obviously all the sex tape and all the stuff that came out.
Divorce, the car crash situation,
the race stuff. It's not been
a
great
lot of poor life decisions, life occurrences.
And what's interesting is Hogan used to always be a very clever businessman. He used to know when to leave so that he wasn't blamed for things, know when to come back so he could take the rewards and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, he's number 13 and he's my favourite of all time, so maybe I'm probably too biased on it. But do either of you guys think that Hogan be a little bit higher?
I think you're right in what you're saying, and that by and large Hulk Hogan should be in the top 10, but I think for all the reasons you've listed, him dropping 3 places out of that criteria it's not groundbreaking. I think that's probably what you can expect from that.
And he hasn't been full-time in
and
15 years.
Imagine if you look at the average age of people who read the magazine, they probably don't remember Hogan's glory days. It's just something they've been told about. They're aware of him.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because
I just know him as the guy who comes back and puts over whatever charity WWE working with.
I've got the friend Andrew I went to uni with, and he never watched wrestling. And when I started doing Inside the Ropes, he started listening to it, and he started watching wrestling at that point. So he had never seen anything pre-2012. And then what he started, I think it was last year, he watched all the WrestleManias from the beginning through because he wanted to just kind of see what all the fuss was about. And I was really looking forward to him watching Hogan and Warrior at WrestleMania 6. Because I thought, well, that's the match. And he didn't get it. And what was interesting about that was maybe if you just weren't, like we have such ties to those characters, Hogan and Warrior, maybe if you didn't watch at the time, to what you're saying, if you're a fan now...
That's why we're not huge fans of Luthez or anybody from sort of that era, Bruno or whoever.
The argument you're making as well about like the legacy and what he left behind, I'm sure like somebody 20 or 30 years older than you could pull out 3 or 4 figures who, without them, there wouldn't have been Hogan.
Jim Lundas would be a good one. He was ranked really low, he just squeezed in. But he was bigger than Hogan at his peak. He was bigger than anybody at his peak.
I don't think Hogan, I think the misconception with Hogan is he wasn't the biggest draw of all time. He was big, but I think he culturally had an impact.
He was
He was Americana.
The biggest draw in a sustained way.
He was Americana. He was, and the thing is, WWF after he left took them years to really replace him. Austin was the first guy they were able to do it. But let's just kind of to conclude the chat here. The top 10, we're not going to give it away of who's number 1 or whatever. But in the top 10, we have guys like Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, Bret Hart, and The Undertaker. I just want to...
Everyone you'd expect, I guess.
Everyone you'd expect.
From a modern fan vote, I think.
I'm going to ask you guys, who would your number 1 have been? Doesn't necessarily need to be out of these guys, but we want to know just for...
I'll tell you, because at the start, I can't remember who I put as number 1 now.
It's just an opinion, you know.
I had Austin. I had Hogan as number 2, but I had Austin as number 1.
Nice. That's why we're pals. Nice. Why Austin is number 1? I mean, I know it's a redundant question, but why?
Again, purely from a personal perspective, like Austin was the first person I ever watched, and I thought, geez, I can't miss this. I can't not watch the next episode of this because I need to know what happens. I need to see him do things. And it had that. I think I probably judge everybody by that Austin criteria. Like, do I like watching him in the ring that much? Do I?
It's a tough criteria to.
Honestly, like not knowing what like good technical wrestling was when I first started, watching Austin just wail on people was absolutely amazing. And I mean the promo work, everything. Like I was captivated by him as a character and as a performer.
A lot of people were.
Yeah. And for me, he was number 1 for me as well. Because when I take my sort of obsession with Hulk Hogan out of it, Steve Austin is what saved wrestling for me in a lot of ways. When Bret Hart got screwed in Montreal, what people don't remember is the television the month after was dire. Yeah. It was terrible. And he was the one beacon that through that time kept people watching. He drew more money, more pay-per-view buys, more everything than Hogan in a shorter period of time. But I think that in terms of influence, what you were saying. I think what Hogan has done in his personal life that has affected his stance, Austin's not done that. Austin has kept himself.
He's stayed away.
He's kept himself of the level.
Austin's gone down the Kenny McIntosh route with his career and just started knocking out like quality podcast after quality podcast.
Thank you. But he also did a thing where he did a few guest referee gigs. He knew it was getting too much, so he stopped doing them. But it's your turn, Mr. Dixon. Who would your number one be?
I can't argue against Austin or Hogan, really. But if I was going to, it'd be Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels. I think the problem with Bret is he didn't draw as much money, anywhere near as much money as the likes of Hogan and Austin. But in the ring, untouchable. The only guy who comes close to him really is Shawn, who in the ring is basically flawless and had not one but two incredible runs.
Yeah.
You know, nobody should be able to take 4 years out and come back and be as good as Shawn was, because Shawn was better when he came back.
I don't think that his... People always talk about, there's the video where Heenan's saying, he's the star of the 90s monsoon. I don't think he was, for me. I think his 2002-2010 run really
I think
made
he was
him
the
what
greatest
people...
in-ring worker in North America in the 90s.
See, I was more a Bret Hart fan.
So was I.
I felt Bret Hart's...
Looking back on
Bret Hart's, to me, looked more real.
Yeah.
Shawn's looked more...
Bret's a different kind of worker, which is, why I think some fans maybe didn't vote for him. I think he can be boring if you don't like that kind of style. And
did you know
he used to a modern style? I am familiar with that. I think that might have hurt him as well.
It kind of goes
he
back,
never mentions it.
Goes back as well, like the audience we've got, they will be much more familiar with Shawn Michaels' work simply because of that latter.
Well, Bret hasn't wrestled since 2000, so I mean we don't count that.
But he was in WCPW, so that'll score him some points.
Yes.
But that is the top 100 greatest wrestlers feature that is in issue 3.
Should we talk about the covers a little bit?
We've got 5 covers. We decided to do different ones based on some of the picks. So we obviously we didn't know if you knew who number 1 would be, so we wanted to put Martin Kirby on there. Or if you have a brain, we do WhatCulture shows. We can sell them there, make money. The other 4 are obviously very, very hot commodities in wrestling from the past or the present. Matt Hardy being the present, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker obviously being the past.
Is Undertaker the past?
Yeah.
Well, until he comes back again. Oh, I forgot he's regular again.
He's regular.
Even though he's not been around. But do go and buy it at shop.whatculture.com. I am somebody who does not praise things unless I really think they deserve praise. And I read this feature, The 100 Greatest Wrestlers. It is so good to read through. And you can 100% argue and agree with different ones.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of the fun of it. Is to kind of see. And I don't know a thing about George Hackenschmidt, but I can read something about him here and find something out. So go to shop.
I know something about George Hackenschmidt.
Okay.
He's fractionally better than Martin Kirby, apparently.
There you go. George Hackenschmidt turning in his grave as we sign off on WhatCulture. You can find James. We can't find him on Twitter. He's not really on there. And you can find Adam Cleary on Twitter at
Adam Cleary.
KennyMC1985. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in the new year when we're forced to come in and talk about issue 4 and plug it. Bye bye.